So hi, everyone. It's Wendy Grove. I am the Director of the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness at the Ohio Department of Education. And in that office, we oversee everything in education settings between birth and grade 3. So we have all of the licensing and step up to quality in education settings. We also have preschool special education, publicly funded preschool or early childhood education, as well as early childhood curriculum and assessment, including Ohio's early learning assessment and kindergarten readiness assessment. So I wanted to just set the stage a little bit so that you know where Ohio began this work. My focus on this presentation, 15 minutes or so, is on inclusive leadership and supporting a leadership in early childhood that is inclusive of children of all abilities. And so I wanted to mention that after a year of work and stakeholder engagement across the state, the Ohio Department of Education released its strategic plan for education for the next several years, 5 years. And Each Child, Our Future is what it's called. Hopefully you have seen this. The entire plan, as well as this placemat and other executive summaries are all available at our webpage. But what I want to point out to you here is the child is in the middle, the whole child. And there are 4 equally valued learning domains. And this is very exciting for us because it's the first time that you see social and emotional learning on par with the academic learning that goes on in schools, which we know is critically important for our young learners. You can see there one goal and the vision that each child in Ohio is challenged to discover and learn, prepared to pursue a fulfilling post-high school path, and empowered to become a resilient lifelong learner who contributes to society. And with our core 3 principles, then we have outlined 10 strategies in order to move toward that vision. Just a quick reminder, in case you were not aware, Ohio serves 1.7 million students, 240,000 educators are currently engaged in our school systems, and there are over 3,500 schools. Then I wanted to mention that just the very next year, it was really March 2019 that we set out to survey educators across the state to really ask them across all kinds of things: professional development, guidance from the state, what kinds of supports, what did they need in order to serve students with disabilities. And so rooted in Each Child, Our Future, which is about each child in their education, we then felt we needed to get a little more information about across each of those 10 strategies, and what do our educators need to fulfill that vision for our students with disabilities. And so we had over 7,000 Ohio educators respond in the 2 weeks that we had this survey open. And there is the link on these slides, which you will be provided directly to a 2-page executive summary or the full report. And we break down every response by age group that the educator works in. And there is some very, very interesting information in there. And I bring this up because it informed what we did next, which was to seek out some supports around how we at the State Department of Education could best support our educators in their quest to support our children with disabilities in schools. So in 2020, I wrote a grant to the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. This is a U.S. Department Office of Special Education Programs funded center that exists to provide supports to states implementing birth to 5 supports for very young children with disabilities. And what they did here is create an inclusion cohort. So that is what I wrote the grant for. No money involved, technical assistance. But what it afforded for us in this state was to create a very diverse group of professionals across state agencies who would come together and look at what ECTA had identified as indicators of high quality inclusion at the state level. So what this slide is showing you is actually they have 4 levels of indicators. They have them for states, which is the analysis that we are doing. They also have community indicators, local program indicators, and then the early care and education environment indicators. And so these are publicly available, free, very interesting to see. And what we have now been able to do is we have a state leadership team around early childhood inclusion who is doing a deep dive into what our state really looks like for early childhood inclusion. Do we support early childhood inclusion? Do we have all of the obstacles out of the way? Have we endorsed early childhood inclusion across the various sectors where children birth to age 5 live, play, and grow? And so that is the work that we are doing now. We have crafted a statewide policy statement on early childhood inclusion that will make its way through the various state agency approval processes and hopefully then be released as a statewide policy statement that endorses and encourages all sectors of again, where children are to be inclusive in their environments and welcoming of their access and participation for very young children. And we will continue to do work. We are looking at degree granting institutions and what they are, the kinds of things that they require in pre-service towards educator license. We know that our licensure bands here in the state have gotten broader, they used to be a lot more narrow. They used to be more focused on either general education or special education. And they, as administration licenses, have become more flexible. Some of that specialization or targeted learning has had to be broadened. And so we will have some more to talk to this group and those of you in institutes of higher education about our work and our potential recommendations around moving the state forward. So I also wanted to then share with you that state leadership team comprised of over 20 individuals who are currently overseeing early childhood programs in state agencies, as well as key organizations throughout our state. We have parents on this group as well, came up with a vision and a mission for this work. And so I wanted to share that with you. We really do have a vision that all Ohioans from birth will have a strong foundation of support, acceptance, and empowerment and where they live, play, learn, and work. And if this is our aspiration, the work that we are doing right now is to facilitate engagement across early childhood systems. Also to model the partnerships to implement policies that will then cultivate access, participation, and support for Ohio's children from birth to age 5. So we believe strongly that if we can expect inclusion from birth in the early childhood space, it will set up families, educators, a whole host of providers of services to families with very young children, and the children themselves to then come to expect inclusion, meaningful inclusion for the rest of their lives, wherever they are engaging in activities of life. So with all of that, what did all of this tell us? So I've started in 2018, coming right up to 2021. And what it told us are these things. Our professionals want targeted learning opportunities. No one likes to go to work and not feel competent and confident about the work they are doing with children or with anyone. And that our careers and jobs often demand more than what we were actually trained to do. I don't think this will come as a surprise to many of you who are actively supporting our students in institutes of higher education across a wide variety of experiences. And whether those are in classroom or during internships or various other opportunities. So we are also seeing more complex, higher needs in younger children. And you know this probably as well as I do, but there has been some significant contributions to the scientific literature around experiences, adverse early childhood experiences. Our Center on the Developing Child out of Harvard University and their brain research, and about what matters, that early experiences matter for lifelong trajectories of our social well-being, our emotional well-being, our financial well-being, our educational length and tenure of time and interacting with the educational systems. And so we know all of this, and it's time to really adjust the supports that we are giving to not only young children and their families, but the educators and the administrators and the school systems that have this immense responsibility to educate and provide opportunities for Ohio's children. So what we did then was continue looking for opportunities to again, provide support, learn, gather dollars if we could to look at things. So right when the pandemic really got started in March 2020, I was writing the grant for a U.S. Department of Education 325L grant. And I wanted you to see this graphic because the U.S. Department of Education has really put together a nice sort of system for attracting and retaining and preparing professionals in order to work within any system really to support our citizens with disabilities. And so what we wanted to do, and we saw the opportunity, was this 325L, which is to increase the capacity of leaders to improve the systems serving children with disabilities. As the director for early learning and school readiness, I can tell you from direct experience that often our school leaders are chosen and selected and promoted because they are able to inspire and lead, but very rarely do they come from the early grades and preschool or birth to age 5 kindergarten readiness and ready or into kindergarten entry, excuse me. And so what we know to be true is that there are people in positions of leadership and decision-making power who have little to no experience with early childhood in general, childhood development, how children learn in the earliest grades. And so we wrote a grant that would allow us to test out our idea for targeted professional development and targeted learning for professionals who are already in Ohio's early childhood sectors. So a couple more slides for you here. Ohio's Early Childhood Inclusive Leadership Fellowship was born with this goal in mind. What we wanted to do was enhance the skills, knowledge, and leadership capacity of early childhood leaders so that they can then impact the development and education of children with disabilities and their families in meaningful and intentionally positive ways. So we are one of 6 grantees in the nation to have successfully been awarded this grant. And we opened up this fellowship to professionals in any sector, birth through grade 3. And among the grantees across the nation, we are actually the only grantee who chose the entire birth to grade 3 or early childhood period of life. Most are focusing on early intervention or preschool special education, but we thought it was important to build capacity across the early childhood period, as well as train our fellows to have a working knowledge regardless of where they were currently professionally employed. So we were aiming for cohorts of professionals who were diverse in all ways, including the sector in which they worked. Elementary school principals, special education coordinators, childcare providers, early intervention service coordinators, or supervisors were invited to apply. And so we have structured this fellowship as a 2-year engagement with us. So the first thing that we did, though, was identify critical core competencies. We took all of the professional competencies from the Division of Early Childhood, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, at least 2 or 3 others, and we looked at them all together. And what we did is we plucked out and created a set that we call critical core competencies. And they run the entire period of birth to grade 3. And beginning in July, just this year, each fellow completed a self-assessment that we created. So we took each one of those critical core competencies and we asked them to rate themselves between largely inexperienced to very skilled. And again, it was just what they thought of themselves. And we did this for each one of our competencies across each of 3 age groups. So birth to 3, 3 to 5, or age 5 to age 9. The school age, preschool age, early infant toddler age. We also then identified high quality virtual learning opportunities. So once we had our core competencies, we set out to see what was already publicly available in order to teach these competencies. And there is no shortage of free and available, mostly, we focused on mostly free and available opportunities. And so we put those into a syllabus, if you will, or a menu that our fellows could self-select from. We set the minimum at 40 hours of self-paced learning opportunities, and this needs to be connected and based on those areas of growth opportunity within their self-assessment. And lastly, we have a monthly community of practice with topics, lectures, and student presentations. And so we kicked that off in August, and this learning experience will run between July of this year all the way through June of 2022. So we asked our fellows for a 1-year commitment to the learning experience portion. And then we will follow that up with a 1-year mentoring experience so that the fellows stay engaged with us for 2 years, 2 consecutive years, so that our fellows will identify a current problem of practice where they work now. So we are not trying to get folks to change professions. In fact, we want them to stay exactly where they are. But what we want them to do is to have the highest levels of confidence and competence in the critical core areas of knowledge and across birth to grade 3. So we are creating a mentoring match survey that will connect fellows with mentors. And we've just begun this bit. We are examining mentoring frameworks now in order to begin in July. And I think near my last slide on this is the grant. I just wanted to give you some basics around this particular piece of work. The grant itself is funded for 5 years. We will be able to do a total of 3 2-year cohorts that will go through each cohort will go through the 2-year cycle. We will have a lot of outcome data to share widely and publicly. We are also committed to adjusting as we go based on the experiences of the fellows as well as the leadership team. We will report on findings and the feasibility of replicating and expanding this program, which ultimately, if it proves successful, we would like to do. And lastly, just to tie it all together, we will likely have recommendations for our partners in institutes of higher education. And so as we learn more and start to report out, I hope to be back here with you all or engage with you in other opportunities so that I can share what we're learning and gather some input and feedback from you all. And with that, I will just end my slides with my contact information and stop sharing to see if there are questions that occurred while I was speaking, or if there are any now. Okay.
All right, well, Wendy and Mindy, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate the ability and the partnership to understand the efforts that have happened so far and what we will be seeing coming in the near future.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. I'll be sending those slides along to be distributed. So thank you so much for
Wonderful.
your time, and have a great rest of your conference, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.